Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining me in this episode of Lunch with a Leader. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's going to be a fun conversation. You've had an amazing career. If you went back to that little small town you grew up in, did you ever dream looking in the rearview mirror you would be where you are today?
Probably not. That's the short answer. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way at all. It's just, my childhood, we were, I was just trying to have fun. And, a lot of times when you're a young kid, you don't have a lot of foresight. But to your question, I probably didn't dream big enough, because I feel like I get to have a job where we're making a difference in the world. And it's, I think we all want to get to the point in life where we say, you know what, I've been blessed and I'm there.
You think about that time in your life, and we talked before we went on the air today about how it even plays into what you do now and why you have a passion to do what you do now. Take me back to that town and to your parents. What were some things growing up they instilled in you that you're really sort of living out today?
Well, I think everything. I think the person I am today is attributed to my parents. They're still around and ornery as ever. But they instilled everything that I am today came from my parents, just being incredible people, and not only telling me the kind of person I needed to be, but showing me, and they lived it out. So I grew up in a town of 4,000, which was the largest town for a 50-mile radius. So that was the big city. A lot of cornfields. You pretty much were a farmer or a teacher, and my parents were both to make ends meet. And the work ethic, the attitude, the mindset, integrity, what's truly important in life. They taught me all that, and I'm very grateful to them for the example that they showed. Because sometimes people talk about things, but they don't necessarily live it out. And my parents lived it out.
You think about that season of your life. When did you begin to discover, I've got some leadership abilities, I've got some things in me? What age were you when that began to really manifest itself?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it goes back to, a lot of times people ask me that question, can you create leaders, or are you a born leader? And I don't know if there was ever a point in time in my life where I said, hey, I think I have some leadership qualities. But I do think at a young age, I remember being one of those people that it was, hey, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And it always bothered me, and still does to this day, when people are, they have the data to make an informed decision, and analysis paralysis sets in. And, at some point you have to go, and you're going to fail, and you're going to make mistakes, and you have to tweak, what you're doing. But I think that leaders, I think we all struggle with that, and I don't have the perfect answer to that. But there was never really a point where I thought, hey, I need to be a leader. But I guess looking back, I won a leadership award my freshman year in high school as the leader in my freshman year in high school. And that looking back, that surprises me, because I was just a dorky kid who played some basketball, and I don't know why I won that award. I really don't know, because it wasn't like I was overly popular or whatever. But I guess that's when it probably hit me, was when I won an award when I was a freshman, and I'm like, this is interesting. I didn't really understand it.
Basketball is a big piece of your high school story, and I know you were voted back into the Basketball Hall of Fame there in Illinois. What did you learn playing basketball that played into what you even do today?
Everything. I mean, My parents are both teachers, so I'm gonna get in trouble. But I learned more about what I do today and what I apply to my day to day. I learned on the basketball court than even in the classroom.
Wow.
Um, and I enjoyed school and all that, but the little town that I grew up in has quite a tradition of athletics, and when you're a town of 4,000, a lot of times the town is defined where I'm from by your athletic programs at your high school, and we only had one high school. So our football program was incredible. Our basketball program was incredible. And when I was a little second grader sitting in the stands, I just wanted to play for the Sockies. And my life from the time I was in second grade and sat in those stands until I graduated high school was driven by that pursuit. And I know that sounds shallow, but I'm just being real. That was what motivated me. And I learned so much from sports, how to be a team player, what it means to be a teammate, how to succeed, how to fail, how to set goals and work hard to attain your goals. I mean, there's so many things that I think people learn from sports. And again, back in I graduated in the mid 80s. There weren't all these youth programs and the pressure on 5-year-old kids to decide what sport they were going to be great at, and they single thread it nowadays. Yep. And I mean, we just played all sports. Yep. And then when you get to high school, you figure out what you're good at. And I was fortunate when I was in 8th grade. I finished 8th grade. I was the shortest kid on the basketball team. I was 5'7", and I was fortunate to grow a foot in high school. So I literally went from 5'7" point guard in 8th grade who never saw the floor. And I was a terrible basketball player, but I practiced all the time. I just wasn't very good. To a 6'7" guard in the mid 80s. I grew a foot. That sure helped.
That is crazy. That's great. And stayed a guard. That's even the crazier part of the story. They didn't move you down in the paint.
Well, I mean, I'd go down there, but yeah, I mean, the fact that I could go outside too was rare in those days.
Yeah, and those were great times. I grew up, so I graduated high school in '87, and really, you went season to season. As soon as football ended, you picked up the basketball and got going. When basketball ended, picked up the baseball. That was just the way life was back then. Are you glad you grew up when you grew up? Are you looking back now? Are you glad? Man, I'm glad I got the experiences that I got, even though kids today may have more than we had. Are you glad you got those experiences?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not sure they do have more today. I think there's a lot to be said for simplicity and not being confused by all the social media and everything that goes with it. So to your point, I mean, back when we grew up, you just played sports. It wasn't a business like it is today. I mean, today it's a big business, and there's pressure on these kids to play sports because they can. Well, I mean, a lot of times parents are living out their dreams through their kids, and I saw that when I coached my sons in travel basketball and all those kind of things. I mean, you run into a lot of situations that just make you sad. But I think if done properly, sports can teach young people the benefits of working hard. And I think one of the most valuable terms that you can call somebody in my book is a teammate.
Amen.
And that applies today when I'm in my mid 50s, just like it did when I was growing up.
When did basketball come to an end? How did the game end for you? Because probably when you're in high school and you to have made the Hall of Fame, you had a great high school career. When did you learn this is it? This is the end. The shoes are getting hung up. The jersey's getting turned in. My basketball days are over. How'd you learn that? And how did it hit you?
Well, the great thing about having phenomenal parents is I knew that when I was 10. I wasn't going to the NBA. And I had both my parents are just incredible, and they told me, hey, use basketball to get a good education so that you can focus on the things that truly matter in life. So basketball was, while I said that it taught me a lot about life, and it was probably the greatest education for me, that was my love language. That was my passion. So fortunately, it prepared me for what I do today. Every day in my role now, I apply what I learned on the basketball court. But my parents always told me, hey, you're not going to be, this is not your occupation. This is something fun that you do to get you where you want to go.
That's really good. And that doesn't always happen now.
That's right.
And and there is a massive pressure. Your faith plays big into your story. When did faith become an anchor for you, and not something your parents had, but really settled into your heart and began to be sort of the operating system behind the scenes for who Tim is today?
Yeah, I was raised in the church, and I didn't get it. I was playing church, and again, no fault of my parents. They did everything right, but as a young person, I didn't. It was my, you said it well. It was my parents' faith, and I didn't get it until I was in my early 30s, and I was at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, and I thought I was going to die. Honestly, I thought I was going to die. I was on an operating table, and that's what it took for me to understand what is truly important in life. Is I almost I thought I was going to die, and the question that lingered with me and really haunted me before they put that oxygen mask on me to knock me out was, what happens if I die right here? And to your point, it wasn't what's the Sunday school answer. It was what really happens if I die right here. And that led me on a journey where I asked a lot of dumb questions of a lot of people, and read a lot of books. And The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel is the book that got me. That book is the one that I'm sure he tried to prove his wife wrong.
Yep.
And I was kind of taking the same stance he was. And that one really hit me, and it made sense. So my early 30s, I figured it out, and that changed everything. I tell my two sons, I have a 28 and 25-year-old. I tell my two sons, there are two questions that you have to answer, and they're the most important questions that you have to get right. The first one is where you're spending an eternity. And the second one is the person that you choose to be your partner to go through this life with. If you get those two questions right, it gives you a peace that surpasses all understanding.
You are now, and you and I are about in the same age and in the middle of our journeys. I think third quarter. I think that we're definitely out of halftime. We're probably, the clock's clicking, ticking down on the third quarter now. As you look at that, where would you be if faith weren't part of the story? Let's say the Mayo Clinic scene doesn't happen, and Tim just keeps striving and leading and growing, and probably acumen wise, you still probably end up in the same place in business, but with a very different purpose. What would be different about you if you took faith out of it?
Well, I think I'd be a mess. And I'm a mess now. So, I think when people, when they accept Christ and they start on the journey of faith, I think a lot of times people think that they're supposed to have all the, answers to the questions, and they're supposed to have life figured out. And that could not be further from the truth for me. So, maybe I would have a similar career path, but I doubt it. I think I would have made a lot of really poor decisions. And I think I would have not had the peace that I have now. To be able to, when you know where you're spending eternity, I think everything changes, and you look at life through a different lens. So I think anything that I have done well since my early 30s, I think, is attributed to the fact that I understand the bigger picture and how this story is going to end. I mean, when you know how it's going to end, you're more apt to live in a manner that is glorifying while you're here.
It's good. That's really, really good. You know, we were talking before we went on air, and I was asking you sort of your journey because you've been in the healthcare world now, and I asked you if that was your background. You said no, but when this opportunity came up to get in that world, you had a passion to get in healthcare. What's sort of some of the driver of that for you that gives you a real sense of purpose today?
Well, it goes back to where I was raised, and I grew up in a small town, and we had a hospital. The hospital's still in our town. My hometown is still my hometown, although it was a long time ago. I grew up in the best place imaginable for me. But that little small town of 4,000 people has a hospital, but no doctors graduate from med school and want to go to Pittsfield, Illinois. So that presents challenges, which you don't even know as a kid, because there just aren't that many physicians that want to go to a lot of towns in the United States, and that leads to a lot of inequities in our healthcare system, where you're not getting the same access to healthcare that you get in Alpharetta, Georgia.
Yeah,
You just aren't. So here at Jackson and Coker, we actually get to make a difference in the world, and our mission statement is to connect providers, that's physicians and advanced practitioners, with communities to transform lives. So we get to connect those physicians and advanced practitioners with communities like the little community that I grew up in, and it's my hometown. And by doing that, we transform lives. If that doesn't get you excited to get out of bed in the morning, I don't know what does.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting to think about it, because so much of what drives you is an empathy for where you came from. And I know that you probably don't even think about it on a daily basis, but I can hear it, not knowing you, I can hear it in your voice. There's an emotional intelligence that's a part of that. And I know as a leader, EQ is a big deal to you. Let's say there's a leader listening today, Tim, and he goes, or she goes, I want to change the ability to feel what people feel. I want to go from transactional to transformational. Can people still do that?
Oh, I definitely think so. And I encourage people to find that, because life is really hard, and life is a lot of work if you don't have purpose. And I know that because I've lived it without purpose. And I think at our core, human beings want to make a difference, and we just struggle on finding out how to get to that point. And whether it's working for the right company, like I get to work here at Jackson and Coker. I mean, are you kidding me? Not only are we making a difference in the world, I get to work for people who make a huge difference outside of what we do. I mean, the philanthropic initiatives that we have here, the incredible heart that our founders have to help others all over the world. I mean, when you're working to make a profit so that you can give it away, that's powerful.
That's really
So
good.
I encourage your listeners to try different things. It's no different than the sports analogy we were using. As kids, we played them all, and then we figured out what we were good at. I think there's so much pressure on our young people, whether they're coming out of high school or college, to know what they want to do with their life. And I don't, I'm in my mid 50s. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. So I think we need to put less pressure and give them more opportunities to fail, so that they figure out what they're good at and what they enjoy and what they're passionate about.
Do you find yourself, as you get older, do you find yourself more empathetic or less empathetic for those that you lead, the team that works around you? Where the younger workforce, the people around you in your office, do you find yourself getting distant from them and really having to work at it, or is it something that comes pretty naturally for you?
I love it. That's one of the favorite parts of my job is, but probably no different than you. I still think I'm 25 in my
Yeah,
head.
that's right. That's right.
My body doesn't feel like it anymore, but I think I'm 25. So I think as leaders, we have to connect with people where they are. And if they're a year out of college, or if they're older than I am and they have a different lens that they're looking at life through, my role is to connect with each of them and understand what their definition of success is in their life, not just in their job, and help them get there. I mean, I think as believers, we're asked to go into the world, not live in a bubble, and help people figure life out, and figure out what is truly valuable. So that's one of the favorite parts of my job.
How do you continue to grow? So you've been in this field for a long time and have gotten very successful at it. How do you continue to push, Tim, so you stay stretched and stay at the top of your game?
Well, I use a sports analogy, and I'll go back to what I said I was taught is I know there's always people out there better than me. I continue to put myself in positions where I'm very uncomfortable. This year, for instance, and we talked about this, but I spoke at the Kennesaw Business Association. I came into 2023, and I do not like public speaking. So I'm just giving you a real life example. Yep. I don't enjoy it. I don't think I'm good at it. But I said, you know what? I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone this year. And as I defined my goals for the year, I said I'm gonna have at least 2 speaking engagements in front of large groups, and I've done that. And again, I don't think I was particularly good at it, but it pushed me and stretched me out of my comfort zone, and I think that's how I grow.
Why do you think we get more resistant to that as we get older?
Well, I think we get comfortable. I think we just, I'm always fighting the urge to be comfortable. Like if you ask me when I get off of work today, would I prefer to go home and sit on the couch and watch a ball game, or would I prefer to go work out? I prefer to go sit and watch a ball game, but I know that I have to stretch myself out of my comfort zone. And I think we're all fighting that urge to be comfortable. And that applies to a lot of things. That applies to our faith. That applies to our workplace. That applies to being a husband or a wife or a dad or a mom. I mean, there's a lot of analogies that you could use with that.
You have a speech that you do when you travel, and I know you work with a lot of groups and talk about there's 5 things to be uncommon. How hard is it for somebody? Let's say there's a young leader listening to this, and they're just beginning their company. They feel like nobody notices them, nobody sees them. What would you tell them about being uncommon that will cause them, if they will stick to it, that will cause them to be seen and to make a mark one day?
That's a great question. I think you have to be in an environment where you can be seen, because I have worked at some of those companies where, I felt like I wasn't being seen. That's because I wasn't. So sometimes you have to control your environment and make sure that you're surrounded by people who you will be seen if you differentiate yourself from other people who don't care or aren't as productive or whatever it is. So I think the environment does matter, and the people that you surround yourself, it always matters. But then, everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to be seen. But I do think there's a disconnect a lot of times. And that's what I talk about when I do speak on this, is the common sense is not common in today's world. So having common sense instantly differentiates you from a number of people. But sweat equity matters too. I mean, good old working hard and putting in whatever time it takes to accomplish your goals. I think a lot of people want the Instagram version of life, but very few people that I meet are willing to put the time and effort in to be great.
Why do you think and I think you and I have a pretty good vantage point on this. Why do you think that's getting even more prevalent? That kids go, I just want to sit where he sits. I want to sit in Tim's chair. What? How quick can I get there? Why do you think the sweat equity is getting minimized from where it used to be?
Well, I get asked that question a lot, and I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Maybe it is. I'm not sure that it's that much different than when I was that age. And I'm actually encouraged by the generation that's, coming out of college, or they're in their 20s. I'm very encouraged by what I see. I'm not in that camp of, one of those people that's been around and they're like, oh, this generation,
Yeah.
it's not good. The world's in trouble. The world may be in trouble, but I don't think it's because of this generation. I think there's a lot of incredible people out there, just like there was when we were kids.
That's right.
And when we were coming out. So I'm not convinced that that's necessarily the case. I think I was thinking a lot like some people when I was 22. I wanted that, but I wasn't sure I wanted to work for it either. But it sure looked good.
Yeah.
So you have to fail. You have to try some different things. You have to live life, and eventually you figure it out if you just are relentless on doing things with excellence. That's the key.
What was your biggest failure that you struggled to overcome? As you look back on your career, what's a hurdle that almost got you, that you go, man, this failure could have been fatal, but it wasn't, but it could have been?
Well, when I answer that question, I go back to college, and my version of college was not everybody's version. I went to the United States Air Force Academy out of high school, and I went there to play basketball. That shows you how intelligent I am. You don't go to West Point, Annapolis, or the Air Force Academy to play basketball, because there's a lot going on other than basketball, and I learned that the hard way. But I left after 2 years, so that was probably the biggest fail, and it could have derailed me in life because they broke me. I mean, I literally I thought I was hot stuff. I thought I was smart. Life had been pretty easy for me. I mean, I had to work hard, don't get me wrong, but things had come pretty easy. And they broke me, and that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me at the ripe old age of 19 after my sophomore year of college, because I realized it's a big old world out there. There's people a heck of a lot smarter than me, and definitely better than me at basketball. And I need to figure out what I'm doing here. And that was a wake-up call. Now, it could have broke me because they did break me, but I used it as an opportunity to learn from failure. And in looking back, that was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me.
And you couldn't have told you that in the moment, though.
If
we'd have pulled up chairs, me and you, and sat at Hardy somewhere and said, all right, tell me about your experience. And I told you about my baseball. I played baseball up at Liberty. I'll tell you about my baseball experience and how it ended. At that moment, what did it feel like?
I was a complete failure. Not only did I feel like I embarrassed my family, because it was a big deal to get a nomination to the Air Force Academy in my town. And nobody ever had. And I was going there to play basketball, and I was going to do all these great things. And then I come back at the ripe old age of 19 with my tail between my legs, and I failed. So I felt like I not only was an embarrassment to my family, I felt like I was an embarrassment to my whole town. So the burden that I felt, it was rough. It was a rough time in my life.
Successes are what we're known for, but failures are probably the things that shape us the most. If you could sit parents down, we were talking about sports here a few minutes ago. You could sit parents down and say, you need to let your kids fail because what? Why would you tell them it is necessary as a parent, as hard as it is, to let your kids experience failure at some point in their growing up lives? Why is that going to benefit them when they're in their 20s, 30s, and 40s?
Well, they are going to fail at some point. So really, what you're doing is allowing them to fail while they're under your roof, which is a heck of a lot better than when they get out and they're married and they have kids and they're 28 years old and then they fail and they've never failed before. That is not good. So I think my wife and I always tried to allow and push our sons out of their comfort zone so that they failed while they were living in our house. And I think a lot of parents, and I did it too, you want your kids to have a better life than you do. You think that's, materialistic, and you think that they need this and they need that. And I struggled with that as well. So I think people have good intentions around that, but by doing that, you actually are hurting them more than you're helping them.
My children are 29 and 26. So our kids are around the same age. And I tell parents this all the time. I felt more peer pressure being a parent of them than I did going through school and what I felt from friends. There's a peer pressure that parents face as you travel and you teach and you help your workers there at Jackson and Coker talk about these uncommon traits. What was the most uncommon thing you wanted your sons to get growing up in your home? What was it you said, when they left my home, I want them to take away this uncommon trait or traits because I know it can take them somewhere in life? What would you say that would be?
I think the foundation for everything is knowing that God put them on earth for a reason, and that they need to believe in themselves, because the world out there will churn people up. And I see this a lot. There's a lot of people. There's a mental health crisis in our country right now, and I think if you don't have a belief in yourself, which ultimately is a belief in God put you here for a reason, and what is that reason, and trying to figure out what your purpose is in life, which we talked about earlier. But if you're doubting yourself and you're doubting why you were put in the situation that you're put in, that fundamental belief in yourself and in turn that you were put here for a reason, but that's kind of fundamental to everything. And I think we talk about the difference between this generation and maybe when we grew up. I think that is a bigger issue in today's world. I mean, Tim Elmore, who I know you know as well,
yep.
He talks about that a lot. That the average college student today, they would have been admitted to an asylum in the 1950s,
yep.
with their level of anxiety, and that's the part that I think we don't talk about enough in this country, and allowing young people to believe in themselves and figure out how they were made, and then what is their purpose, and helping them on that journey, having people help them on that journey.
The scripture says David served his purpose in his generation and then he fell asleep. So that's a great line.
It is.
What do you believe was the purpose God created Tim Fischer for? What do you think when he knit you together and put you where he put you, with the parents he put you with the skill set that he gave you, what do you think was the purpose he created you for?
I think I was intended to, and I don't know if I'm living this out as well as he wanted me to. That goes back to what we talked about earlier. I think I was made to go into the world. Sometimes I'm like, well, the missionaries that go, all over the world, and I mean, like, how cool is that? What a incredible impact that they're making. Now, some people would be like, hey, don't send me, to so-and-so. And I've heard those stories, but I think I was created to go into the world where a lot of times it's about dollars and spreadsheets and all that's great. But I think we can do both. I think we can make an impact, make a difference in the world, and still help a lot of people provide for their families by working hard.